I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, as we gather in this space, the winds of struggle, illness, and change blow all around us. We pray tonight for the healthcare workers that are stressed and stretched thin. May your strength be upon them. I pray that your spirit of wisdom and discernment would be upon the men and women at these tables here tonight. And may your spirit rest upon each of us as we seek to care for not only ourselves, but for one another in this community and in the world. And I pray this in the name of Christ, our hope and our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Before we do roll call, item number 24, we are moving to 7A. The engineer that will be presenting that has another meeting and would like to go as quickly as he can so he can make this other meeting. So we will be moving
transportation.
that. Yeah, presentation by HDR.
Yep, okay.
Roll call, please.
Sabers,
Here. Barely.
Rice,
Here.
Dosher, Picardo,
Here.
Barrington,
Here.
Allen,
Here.
Charks, Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum. Approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on the consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion beginning the formal agenda items. Is there anything you wish to remove?
I don't have anything to remove, but I want to make a comment on item 5J, the application for the, I guess, the part-time FEMA FTE, I'll call it. My issue is that potentially by doing this, we're putting 3 years in advance. The council is going to have to accept an increase of 3 FTE. And I don't think that's right. I'm going to vote for this since it's at this point just applying for the grant. But if we have a true FTE issue at the fire and EMS, it should have been brought up during budget. We should have debated it at the budget time frame, that if they think that we need that, it should have been that so that the council and everybody else would have been able to see or hear the rationale behind it. Instead, we passed a budget with no FTE increase and then come and apply for a grant that possibly creates 3 FTE that have to be permanently in place 3 years from now. I just don't think that's right. If we are going to have the debate on needing the FTE, we should have it in an open budget meeting.
Okay. And if we get the grant, we certainly will have that. That's my point of, we're just applying for it at this point. We'll see what happens.
Right.
I know there's retirements and all those types of things that can happen in that time frame, but I don't want to force a council 3 years from now into having to accept a FTE requirement increase.
Yeah, the bad part is you guys have to approve them applying for the grant.
I know.
In order to get the grant, we have to apply for it, and we'll go from there.
And my
We don't
point
have to
there
accept
is, if we thought we needed it, why wasn't it brought up at budget?
Marius, when would you kind of figure out when we would get this if we did qualify?
First of all, Mayor and Council, Marius Larson, Chief of Fire and EMS, my apologies for not bringing it up at budget. My initial reaction to that is that we were told that there would be no full-time, no addition of personnel at budget time to bring up, so I didn't bring it up at that time. We're at the center of a perfect storm, and I'll go into that if we do get this grant, and I can explain to you why I am bringing this up. It would be for 2 personnel, 2 FTEs, and covered for 3 years. Mr. Allen, it would be roughly in September when that would be awarded. So we're looking at adding 2 personnel if possible, and it's covered for 100% for 3 years. Yeah, so go ahead.
And I wanted to add to that, the reason why this was brought up now was at my suggestion. We weren't even sure if the SAFER grant was still being funded. but because of some recent experiences in fire and EMS, we thought it was worth going to at least look, see if we could get the funding. We also have an opportunity, because we do know we have some retirements coming up, that if we see it's not financially making sense, that we could eliminate the retiree positions and then just keep the two through the SAFER grant. So normally, I think it would be a little more hesitant, but it's an opportunity to try to see if we could address some of those issues, having it 100% funded for 3 years, knowing that in the future we'd have a way to reduce 2 additional employees to offset it.
And part of the reason this is now coming up is we've had some staffing issues of recent due to COVID, as well as the ability to run some ambulance runs that we just can't do because we don't have staff. So if we get a grant, we can look at it, and at that time, we'll make a decision as to whether we accept it or give it back. Okay?
Yeah, correct. This is not a move to force council into doing something that they don't want to do. It's simply an opportunity for us to do something, and I wanted to get that in front of council and see if that was a possibility. So thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Move approval of consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address these items? Roll call vote, please.
Dosher. Ricardo. Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we're going to, citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of the city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items to be considered, but no action will be taken. Does anybody wish to address us? Mrs. Beck.
Good evening, Council. Jerry Beck with the Development Corporation and Chamber. 3 quick updates. Well, the Great Resignation didn't just hit the United States, it hit our office as well, and we found 3 replacements for 3 staff who have left us. We have a new chamber director. She's also directing our CVB. Tiffany Batdorf is coming from Oklahoma City to Mitchell, South Dakota, so I'm helping recruit from out of state as I can. Her tie to South Dakota is that she's a daughter who is attending USD playing softball for them, sir. Go Coyotes. So, okay. We have a new CVB and event coordinator, Aaron Heeb. I think many of you know him. He's from Mitchell, and some of you have already worked with him on the SEA, so we're excited to have Aaron on staff. And then finally, we hired Alex Heidinger, who is from Parkston, and she's helping us with all kinds of special things that are going on, including Mitchell Day at the legislature on March 7th, and put it on your calendar if you would like. We'd love to have you join us, but we'll be serving lunch to our legislators with specialties from Mitchell, and so it should be a great day. Very last Monday of the final week of the legislative session. Okay, progress on the Western Building. You probably noticed that we had a little bit of the street torn up and the sidewalk in front of it torn up, but that was allowing the building to tie into the Main Street pipe and provide enough water for the building. Work is underway. They're working on the stairwell and the elevator shaft, and the block work will continue until February, and we have temporary heat on the site, which is pretty important right now. So we're waiting the outcome of a grant from it's a Deadwood grant that would finish up the windows on both the west and the south side, so fingers crossed there. And then finally, we are getting some help with workforce housing. Terry Sabers is sharing his 45 years of construction experience and leadership by chairing our steering committee. We have a contract that we're working on with Homes Are Possible, Inc. in Aberdeen. They're going to contract with us for the first 6 months of our existence so we can get our legs under us. And tomorrow we're meeting with District 3 on obtaining governor houses and applying for local infrastructure improvement grant funding, which the legislature, with the governor's leadership, are putting $200 million into that fund. So with any luck, we might be able to tap into that. So, questions? Could I talk any faster to get under 9 seconds left? So,
Good job.
thank you. Have a good evening.
All Anybody else wish to address council? Okay, we're moving item 24 up to this point.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, Council. Jonathan Wagon is with us from HDR. He is a professional engineer and a transportation planning manager, or project manager with HDR. Tonight he's going to discuss the various tasks, phases, and outcomes of the transportation study. And he'll also highlight information for the upcoming public meeting that will be held January 27th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 at the Corn Palace. And also, just so everyone's aware, there is a community survey available that we'd like everyone in the community and surrounding area to take, and that's at www.mitchellmtp.com. And with that, I will turn it over to Jonathan.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thanks for allowing me to spend a few minutes here to introduce the Mitchell Area Master Transportation Plan for you, as well as a public meeting that's planned for next week. There are two handouts in the packet that I provided for you. The first one here is the project roadmap and the phase outcomes. I just want to touch on a couple items here. The first thing is that for this master transportation plan, this is a long-range plan. We look at all modes of travel. So we're looking at vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, transit. We can incorporate some air recommendations as well. Just bringing those all together here into this multimodal plan. The plan itself summarized in really 5 key phases. We're currently in phase A, the baseline conditions analysis. And this is essentially what we call the issues and needs phase of the study, that we collect all the issues and needs, through analysis, through study team input, and then culminate that with the upcoming public and stakeholder meetings where we get public and stakeholder feedback on the issues and needs that we need to address here with the Master Transportation Plan. That moves us into phase B, which is the standards development. And that's really a series of sub-plans that really lays a framework for the following phases throughout the study. Moving to phase C, which is a future needs analysis. And this is where we brainstorm and develop those future projects to be incorporated in the Master Transportation Plan. We also go through the evaluation and vetting of those projects as well. Phase D is the implementation plan, and that is where we develop that fiscally constrained list of future projects, looking out that next 20-plus years from the multimodal aspect here within the Mitchell area. And then that finally moves us into phase E, which is the development of the actual Master Transportation Plan report. And then that will coincide with the final and second set of public and stakeholder meetings where we present recommendations for feedback before we finalize the plan. The second item that I provided was some information on the upcoming public meeting, which is, like Joe said, is scheduled for next week. This first public meeting is a hybrid type meeting in that we have an in-person open house component. Like Joe mentioned, Thursday, January 27th between 6 and 7:30 p.m. at the Corn Palace. People are free to come and go as they want. We'll have a series of stations set up with really the main purpose of providing an opportunity for the public to let us know what they see as issues and needs for the transportation system here throughout the Mitchell area. We also will have a virtual or online self-paced component where the same information that is presented at the open house will be available through the study website. That will be up on Thursday, January 27th, and that will run through the comment period, which extends through Friday, February 11th. So people can view that as they wish at their own pace. There's numerous opportunities to provide comments through that method as well. Like Joe said, there is a travel survey that is available currently, is up and live through the study website, so that can be accessed at any point through February 11th. It's about 16 or 18 really short questions just to kind of gauge that quick snapshot of transportation-related issues and needs here within Mitchell, as well as outline a few of the goals for the Master Transportation Plan. And a couple other items I want to touch on. With this first public meeting, we do have a series of small group stakeholder meetings planned for that same day on Thursday, January 27th. These are targeted invites. 4 meetings, looking at business owners, agency representatives, those interest groups with particularly with the multimodal side of things with bicycle and pedestrian. So we'll have those smaller group meetings during the day, public meeting later that night. Study website is live, mitchellmtp.com. And a couple things here looking ahead. As we move through the study process that we anticipate, phase A here with the baseline conditions analysis concluding around middle of February. From there, we'll move into phases B, C, and D, and that'll really run here through the end of summer. We anticipate recommendations to be developed kind of in that fall 2022 timeframe, and that's when we'll be coming back for that second public meeting, somewhere in the middle to late fall 2022 to present preliminary recommendations to the group in anticipation of study completion in December 2022. So, yes, with that, does anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, you don't have a big enough box for the traffic signal part on this. That's my pet peeve in the city. No, I don't want more. I want them fixed. All right. I'm just kidding.
At what point, John, do you hand this completely over to us and Joe and take it in the future, or how much do you hold our hand through this process?
Yeah, so we'll pretty much drive the process itself. A lot of this, that with these studies, there isn't, per se, a lot of new analysis. A lot of it's kind of bringing in the various components together. We have the baseline conditions analysis, so there are elements of, there's crash history review, there's traffic operations analysis. But then from there, it's really working with the city. We're just generally driving the process. We're not always dictating. A lot of it is, feedback that we get from the study advisory team that gets incorporated. There will be elements where, we make recommendations, but that's not always the case all the way through. It's really, kind of as a whole study team working on this. Then the plan is that once we get to that final report, the final report is turned over to the city. From there, it's essentially, it certainly can be like a living document. When we're prioritizing projects into the future, in this instance, we know it's like the next 20 years. A lot of these plans, we organize those groups by short-term needs, maybe those projects here in the next 5 years, mid-range needs, kind of that 5 to 15-year range, and then 20, long range or, really the hopeful type projects, long range that are out there, and that basically the city can continue to update that. If you want to revisit it internally, 5 years from now, you update the list of projects. What the goal is that a lot of those projects can be, just kind of moved into your CIP, as, Joe and others revisit that every year, so.
Questions, comments? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, executive session according to South Dakota Codified Law 125-23 legal. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
as well, so. Okay, well, hopefully people can hear me now. So, if I can find my mouse. So as the council is probably aware, the language in the ordinance that we have discussing these buffer zones says that you calculate the distance for those from property line to property line, and you exclude the right-of-way. So in at least one situation that you've got in front of you tonight, which would be the application of SST, that would run from this property to MTI campus right over here. And as was discussed at Planning Commission and as council seen tonight, if you run that line between those two properties, it's a considerable distance, but nearly all of it is within the I-90 interstate. So that's just one example of how the strict interpretation of that language can lead to some absurd and kind of unintended results. This was one of the instances that staff actually did identify, but as you start working your way back through all of the other applicants, including the ones that were previously considered and approved by council, and take that same strict interpretation, there's a lot more variances that should have been required. Take, for example, the first applicant. That property down here, the right-of-way would run, sorry, just give me 1 second here to draw the line.
Justin, for the audience there, that property is located in front of Walmart, I believe.
Yep, so that's 1005 East Spruce. The strip mall's located just north of Walmart. And I'm drawing the location to the corner of the Mitchell Tech campus. And as you can see, that's over 1,000 feet in distance. Our ordinance would only require 300. The problem is that line runs completely diagonally through the Spruce Street right-of-way. So technically, none of that distance under the strict interpretation of our ordinance should count towards that distance. Now, obviously, that's such a strange result that our staff didn't even think of it to require them a variance. So as we started running into more and more of these absurd results, we started thinking about, you know, how can we come up with a way to interpret this that is still going to make sense and preserve the original intent of, I think, what everybody was expecting when that ordinance was initially adopted. And we started looking at a couple of different alternatives. The first one would be to, you draw that straight line, but when you come to when you come to a right-of-way, you cross that right-of-way at 90 degrees, and then you resume your line from the other side. In some instances, that is logical, and in some other instances, you're darting all over the place, and it's very convoluted to try to make that work. And that changed a number of variances that would or would not be required for the applicants. Some needed more, some needed less. Another method that we looked at was to draw that straight line, and if that line was running mostly parallel with that right-of-way, you count it towards the distance calculation. If it's running primarily across, you do not count it. So here you'd be crossing the Burr Street right-of-way. So that part would be excluded, but the rest of that line that runs within Spruce Street, that would count towards the distance. So that's another alternative we looked at. And then the final alternative, which is by far the simplest, was to simply just change the language in the ordinance itself and remove that right-of-way language, and just use the strict distances so you don't have to worry about which right-of-way counts, which right-of-way doesn't does none of it count, and have to start in on that whole game. So unfortunately, that means that at this point, staff is recommending that we table all of the existing variances and conditional uses that we have sitting in front of us, that we go through the process to change that zoning ordinance, remove that right-of-way language, and then reconsider all of these locations under that new language. I believe in looking at this, every applicant in front of us would be treated more favorably under that approach. But there is obviously a longer time to make it through that process. But ultimately, that recommendation is the preferred alternative because it's the one that is most fair and is most consistent with the law, and I think is most likely to be upheld if ever challenged in court in the future. So that is kind of where things are at. If council is on board with that approach at this time, staff is recommending that council does table all of the existing variances and conditional uses. That would be items 10 through 13. And then we would also be recommending tabling the actual applications for licenses under item 15 as well, until we could make it through that process and start reconsidering these applications under the new revised ordinance. We would also be recommending that all of the applications maintain their current place in the queue. And when you start making it through that process, procedurally, there will be some additional notices and everything that need to go out, and we'll need to have some additional hearings with Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment again. But basically, we would be starting that procedure back over and trying to run it as simultaneously as we can to minimize any delay for these applicants. So, you know, ultimately, I think staff was trying to do this fairly, and I think everybody thought that we were. It's just, you know, when you get down to it and start looking at some of these situations and, you know, start thinking outside the box a little bit about some of these weird situations that weren't previously identified, I think you start to see how absurd some of these can be. I mean, you could have a location down at the depot area, and it would be a 0-foot setback to something way out at the lake house because it goes from one side of the street to the other side of the street. And I really don't think that that was anybody's intention when talking about these buffer zones.
Justin, can you tell us how the state views the right-of-way?
Yeah, so the state has a buffer zone in place for schools, which is K through 12 institutions. And their buffer is just 1,000 feet, no exclusion of right-of-way. It's just distance, point to point, lot line to lot line, 1,000 feet, and that's all there is to it. So we would be suggesting that we move towards something like that and simply removing the right-of-way from our current calculation.
Justin, do these folks, the applicants that are on board now, have to then go back through planning and zoning for their recommendation?
That's going to depend. It's going to depend on each applicant and how they would be treated under that proposed ordinance. So some of them might still have a part that needs to go back under that process. Some of them might no longer need a variance. So it's going to depend applicant to applicant.
Well, I think one thing we knew when we did the ordinance the first time, without obviously having a lot of direction from the state, I think we all know, and I think it was actually mentioned that night, that we were probably going to come around and circle this wagon a few times and make some adjustments to it, because we were sort of going in here blind, trying to do what we believe was the best scenario. And here we come up right away with one scenario that needs to be already revamped a little bit. The reason why I bring it up, we had people email us a little bit about possibly don't change the ordinance, you know, stick to what you guys put in place. And these are things that exactly that we weren't foreseeing right away, so where we have to go back and take a look at the ordinance and make some change to it. So the public is aware of that, the applicants are aware of it. It's things that we need to do that we're learning from, and I'm pretty sure that the ordinance will probably be revamped again down the road because something else will arise that we're probably going to take a look at and address. But from what you're sort of mentioning to me, Justin, if it's safe to say, it's right now, even with the current one that has been approved, the very first one, the GameStop or whatever it was called, technically they're not even really legal in a roundabout way because if we have right-of-ways in place, we're not even doing the 1,000 feet there that way. So, I mean, something has to be done, and I think revising the ordinance to make something work and hopefully get a few of these other ones that are approved that won't need a variance, I think is a positive way of moving forward for the community.
So I'm in favor of this because it just, again, if we line it up with the state, I think it probably makes more sense to not have state laws conflict with our municipal ordinances. But what would you suggest, Justin, of bringing this back then? Can you kind of give us a timetable?
Yeah, so we charted out what the timetable would be is if we started immediately. We'd be looking at, because it's a zoning ordinance, there is a notice that needs to be published. It needs to be heard by Planning Commission, and then it comes to the City Council to go through the normal ordinance process. So we'd be looking at having the Planning Commission meeting on February 3rd. We'd have a special meeting that day. We'd have the first council meeting on February 7th, and then we'd be looking at the second council meeting on February 14th, doing a special meeting that day. That would leave us publishing those minutes on February 19th, which would make the new ordinance effective March 11th. For those applicants that did not need anything further for variance or conditional use, we could take action anytime after that. Including the applicants that were already approved, we would be able to provide certificates of compliance at that time. And then for any applicants that did still need a conditional use or variance, those hearings would be then held on Planning Commission March 14th, and then the final action for those would then take place March 21st. So, and that is, and I'm not joking when I say that's as fast as it could be done.
Anything else on this? Okay, we'll move into the items. Hearing and action on application for DLJ LLC. They applied for a variance of approximately 448 feet versus 1,000 feet is required. On the table.
And I will say, I think I forgot to mention this in my deal, but all of these were noticed for hearing tonight, so I would still recommend that you give anybody here to speak on these the opportunity to provide their comments. We might have to do that again down the road, but because this was the time and place set for that hearing, I'd still recommend people be afforded that opportunity.
Mr. Jenigas, you want to say anything about it?
Ditto.
Good answer.
No, I would agree that this was time and hearing, so we need to go through the actual process, go through what Planning Commission did for their recommendation. Anybody that's here, proponent, opponent, has their time to speak. And then if the ordinance gets passed, we do the hearings all over again for those that need it.
Well, I'll move to table.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Smith.
And
further discussion.
Just for comment on this one, if you were considering this one under what was being proposed by the staff for the new ordinance, this is one that would still need a variance in the future because it's still going to be less than 1,000 feet from property to property. So this is in all likelihood one that would come back if the ordinance is adopted as proposed.
So this would have to go through planning and zoning also?
Yeah.
Yes, it would basically redo the process.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this one? Okay.
Planning and zoning did recommend denial of it this first time around. You can see that letters in front of you. The letters that I passed out to you guys are ones that didn't make it into the packet for each of the different applications.
Sounds like they're going to get a second chance.
They'll get a second chance on it.
And in all likelihood, what it's going to mean is, right now, it's for 448 feet. It's going to be for something closer to 860 or 8, yeah, so.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Actually, a comment, if I may.
Oh, yeah, come on up. Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Doug Daly, I'm an attorney here in Mitchell, and I represent the interests of Lori Coomer and the Lori Coomer Trust, who are the owners of the property next door to the west of the DLJ proposed property, as well as the Lees, who are the owners of TK Electric. We would encourage you to address the variance issue on this matter here today, due to the fact that the proposal that is being made to readdress the ordinance would not affect the need for a variance. They're still within the 1,000 feet of a prior approved license, as in that I understand in and of itself wouldn't have the need, or that wouldn't be affected by an ordinance change with regard to eliminating the buffers. So we're just delaying the inevitable, in our opinion. The spirit of the code is to not have a congregation of a bunch of dispensaries together, and that's the reason that there was a setback requirement of 1,000 feet. In this particular matter, even if you were to exclude the right-of-way, they're still within that 1,000 feet variance, and we believe that to follow the spirit of the zoning, that application for a variance should be denied. Thank you. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, so now that we've already voted on this. You want to speak to this one as well?
If I may.
Fire away.
Well, I represent the applicant, and I guess what I would say is if we're going to engage in the process of reevaluating the ordinance, there's no downside to tabling this. Let's see what you all decide when you reevaluate. You may change from what's being recommended. You may move those numbers around. There's no hardship to the opposition for us to wait and see what you come up with and deal with it at that time, and that's what we would ask you to do. Thank you.
He's with Mr. Livesay, correct? You represent Mr. Livesay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
If you want to take care of that quasi-vote, I guess, you could have somebody call for a roll call and just handle it that way.
Okay.
Okay, move to table and call for a roll call.
We had a motion and a second, so roll call the vote, please.
Roll call, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Allen.
No.
Barrington.
Aye.
Ricardo. Dosher. Rice.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Motion to table carries. Hearing in action on application for Genesis Farms LLC, CUP. Genesis Farms LLC has applied for conditional use permit to operate a medical cannabis dispensary at 106 West 5th. Mr. Jennings.
Now, this is in central business, so a conditional use is required for a dispensary. Planning Commission recommended denial 2-4 with 1 absent, so the motion failed, so another motion was made. Planning Commission recommended approval 4-2 with 1 absent. Motion carried. There is 1 new letter that I handed out to you. There were 2 letters in the packet that were against it. Neighbors for this, some were against it because they don't feel downtown is a good location for it. Big Friend, Little Friend is in the same building. There's the church that's across the street. The applicant, though, is established in South Dakota, plans on getting 15 of them in the state, seed to sale. Downtown's a good location because it's on the north side of Mitchell. Everything else is down by I-90. It's within walking distance to the Corn Palace, other downtown amenities. Another proponent was there's bars downtown. They don't see this as anything different. So If you have any other questions for me, I'll happy to answer.
And just for the record on this one, this is also, well, this is the conditional use part, but, so this would also come back to council at a future date, but the variance for this location, that would also be necessary under the proposed ordinance, just for council's information.
I honestly do believe that the intent of us downtown was conditional uses to allow it. Now, variance is a whole nother issue. And I see the planning commission did vote in favor of it. But as far as I'm concerned, everything that's associated with this tonight probably should be tabled, and I'm going to motion to table.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it?
Good evening, Emmett Reistroffer. I'm the applicant with Genesis Farms, and I'll keep it very quick because I realize we've kind of gone in a different direction right now. I had a presentation, but I don't feel the need to do that necessarily. I'll email that to all of you and always be available to discuss any questions about our application. I'll just make a couple comments. Through this process, I've had a remarkable time talking to people in Mitchell. I grew up in Sioux Falls, so I'm not from here. But not from too far away. And it was thanks to a longtime friend of mine, who's my landlord, and she's here tonight as well, who helped me find a space. We had talked to multiple agents. I called Fisher Rounds yesterday just to do one more check on any alternative locations that could be available, and we're finding it very difficult. So I'm just asking that you think about that. When we ask for variances, we're not trying to set up in a place that would disrupt a neighborhood or cause any issues for neighbors. We're trying to find something that's suitable for our needs. I could go to a field of land and build something from the ground up. Obviously, that takes much longer and costs much more money, and I don't think that'd be economical for my company. There's the Overtime Bar and Grill that everyone knows about. That would require CUP, but not a variance. It's not too far from where we currently are, but would also have much more cost to buy that building and renovate it. So the spot that we found, we thought was as close to turnkey as any location could be, and our hope is to make it look as close to a doctor's clinic as possible. So neighbors would not see this as a marijuana business even necessarily. It would say Genesis Farms, and that's it on the sign. We want to be discreet, we want to be clinical, and I have, I think, a very good business plan that addresses a number of things like odor control, being a good neighbor, how we train our staff, the types of security systems, and all of that's in my presentation, so I hope I'll have a chance to present that to you at a later time to get into more detail. Just wanted you to know who I am, and what our goal is. And if we were given the latitude to find another location but keep our place in line, I would continue to look and find something that's a good fit in this city. I just wanted you to know it has been tough. And if you don't think it is, I'd say call someone who's in real estate and see what they have to offer. And I'm looking. So, we think we found a good spot. Not everyone may love it. I'm used to that in my industry, but what I'm also used to is once we operate, we tend to have really good relations, and our support increases. It doesn't decrease. So just look forward to talking to you further in the future. And with the extra time through tabling, I hope to talk to staff to learn about how that impacts us, and I'll continue to talk to the community and look for other locations if there's any other possibilities. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address it?
So I will briefly. My name is Bill Parks, and I serve as a pastor at Life Church and the president of religious nonprofit Word of Life Christian Ministries. We're located at 5th and Main, 420 North Main to be exact. And I'm not necessarily here in favor or against Mr. And I wish I could say your last name better, so I'll just call you Mr. Emmett Reistroffer. Yeah. I've actually seen his plan and what he's hoping to do. I wish him well and hope he can find a location somewhere in Mitchell. as you revisit your ordinance. The main reason I'm here is I had 3 council members call me and say, come clarify that you're a ministry located at this location, because there were some questions that were brought up by a landlord. And so to clarify that, I would welcome any of you to come to any of our church activities or services that are listed on our website. You're welcome to come check it out at any time. But as you decide your future requirements, I just ask that you stay within the requirements that you set, especially considering these buffer zones for schools and religious institutions. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address it? Okay, we have a motion to table. And a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing and action on application for Genesis Farms LLC and a variance. Genesis Farms LLC has applied for a variance of 0 feet versus 300 feet is required to be from a religious institution. Mr. Jenigas.
There were 3 more letters that were provided tonight for you that weren't in the packet. Planning Commission recommended denial of this 6-0 with 1 absent. They don't feel that it was a good location being that close to the church with a 0 setback. If the ordinance goes through, it would be 101 foot because it's diagonal to that church location. So it would still have to come back for the variance for that part of it. One of the letters that you received tonight felt it was a good location on the north side of town. It's a good taxable entity for the city of Mitchell. Opponents, of course, too close. The applicant has stated that they'll be closed on Sundays and by 8 p.m. That was one of the things that they wanted to make sure was noticed because of the churches. So any other questions I can take?
Okay.
Move to table.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McCardle, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience want to get up and talk again? Are you coming, Tara, or are you going to stay there? All right.
Keep her.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action on application of FSST Farms LLC. FSST Farms LLC, doing business as Native Nations Cannabis, has applied for a variance of approximately 16 feet versus 300 feet is required from an educational institution, and a variance of 950 feet versus 1,000 is required from another medical cannabis dispensary at 620 South Burr, Suite number 5. Mr. Jenigas.
Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-2 with 1 absent. You have 1 new letter that I passed out tonight that was in opposition of this. They would be, their location, the location from the letter that was sent to you would be south of the Kelly, and they own that property. But it was within the 140 feet that gets notified because it's right away, does not include during our notification. This was one that Planning Commission thought that the spirit of the ordinance was not in effect because the big right-of-way right there. That's where they thought the 300 feet, it's all interstate right-of-way. They didn't feel like that was what the point of the ordinance was. That's why they approved that one. Opposition for it is there's other locations that dispensaries are a destination business and can be found anywhere else in town. I can take any other questions. And if the ordinance does go into effect, it'd be 1,525 feet from MTC, and it would be 1,016 feet from another dispensary. So this one would not come in front of you again for a variance for either of them.
Question.
Yes.
Understanding the interstate the other direction, but if we go towards, with the current wording going towards the running, just questioning the Planning Commission a little bit, that isn't even 1,000 feet. That's like, isn't it like 900 feet or something like that?
It's 950 right now, including the right-of-way, and 4 of them felt that that was far enough away with the intent of the ordinance. It's 1,016 with the right-of-way.
So it's okay one way, but not okay the other way. Just questioning what their reasoning was for 4-2. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Further discussion? Entertain a motion.
Move the table.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion?
I'd just say, Mayor, before we get the vote here, as you heard Mark say, that under the proposed ordinance, this one would not need to come back. So even though you're tabling this tonight, this probably will not come back in front of council likely what we would do is we would request that the applicant at a later date, once that ordinance takes effect, we would probably ask them to withdraw their applications and they would be disposed of that way.
Okay. Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Reconvene the city council, entertain a motion Board of Adjustment to adjourn city council, reconvene regular session.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearings and actions to approve the following medical cannabis dispensary applications. DLJ LLC received on 11/16/2021, 5:02 p.m.
Motion table.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody else want to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Genesis Farms LLC received on 11/18/2021 at 4:22 p.m.
Moved in.
Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody else want to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. FSST Farms LLC received on 11/22/2021 at 4:30 p.m. Motion by Mr. McCardle. Second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion? Anybody else want to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve contingency request of up to $20,000 to cover the installation cost of playground equipment at Kiwanis Park. Ms. Elwine.
Mayor and council, this request is coming from the Kiwanis Club. The 2022 Park and Rec budget includes $68,000 of both revenue and expenses for new equipment at Kiwanis Park. It was going to be donated by the Kiwanis Club of Mitchell. They are now saying that they will fundraise to cover additional equipment costs up to a total of $133,650.39. We would then auto supplement that into the Park and Rec budget when those funds are received. But while they're committed to covering the other costs of the equipment, they're asking for the city to cover the cost of some concrete work and installation costs up to a total of $20,000 max. I think it actually might come in less than that, but that's just making sure that we're covering all the costs. It is not budgeted, so it would have to come out of contingency funds to cover the costs. Park and Rec is requesting that the city provide contingency funds up to that $20,000. And just so everyone is aware, the next item that follows this contingency request is the approval of the Sourcewell bid for that equipment. It is over the state bid limit, so it requires the city council to approve the purchase off the Sourcewell contract. And since it's also above the budget for 2022, it also requires council approval. I'm just pointing that out. If the contingency request, if the council does not want to provide that additional funds, then you'll need to also deny number 17 until they can come up with either, decreasing the equipment or covering the additional costs. And I believe we have two members from Kiwanis here that want to talk about what the project is. And they've done a lot of work on this fundraising, so I said it would.
One thing this is doing is adding, if I'm not mistaken, an ADA accessible playground at Kiwanis Woodlot Park, which we are in much need of.
The city needs this, yes. The Kiwanis Club reached our 100-year milestone this year in Mitchell. We were the first service club in Mitchell. We're pretty proud of that. We're small but mighty with 27 members currently. But the Kiwanis Woodlot Park was gifted, the land was gifted to the Kiwanis Club in conjunction with us helping create Lake Mitchell. So way back in 1920-something, the Kiwanis Club went to the city of Mitchell and said, hey, we need a lake. Here's a spot. We need a water supply. We need recreation. And so we were pivotal in that. And so the city said, hey, here's 100 acres, and we're going to call it Kiwanis Woodlot Park. So it has our name. We like to put improvements out there. The city still maintains it, but we want to add on. So our plan is to add on a section from where the current park is, if you're familiar, between there and the stone building. and it will be a completely inclusive area with a foam floor. When we first came to you with the 68,000, it was going to be wood chip. But after some of our members went to Worthington and viewed their park, they were like, we have to include everybody. And even though wood chips say they're inclusive, a mom of a child in a wheelchair, a mom of a child with a walker says no. It's really, really hard. So adding on that piece really increased our budget, but partnering with the city, in our talks with you, we found out that it opens up more doors for grants for us. Kiwanis is a 501c4, so it doesn't allow us a lot of those foundation grants that we can fill out. But by partnering with you and the city purchasing the equipment for us, we can apply for those grants. The city runs the money through, and we can be eligible in that case. So we're just asking that the city cover the groundwork and the cement work and the installation of the project, and we would buy the equipment.
I should also add, there's also a potential that they would have leftover funds in the Park and Rec budget from 2021, but we never know that till they close out the last year's financials, which can be February or March. So if there's funds left over, you wouldn't necessarily have to transfer contingency. It's just a backup in case there isn't.
Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, if you were instrumental in getting that damn lake put in, you want to help clean it up?
Who else was a former Kiwanian around here? He's current. He's current.
I'm an inactive, very proud Kiwani.
And we love inactive members who pay their dues.
I was president, it was the second.
I'm going to go on record and say I'm going to try to do better. And I will make that motion.
I just thought I'd throw it out there for you. All right, well,
We're in the sidelines cheering for you that we're gonna get it cleaned up one of these
a lot of
days.
people are cheering. I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Barrington.
Yep. So one comment, and it's a great project, and I want to go through with it. It's a little unnerving doing contingencies in January. I've said that before in previous years when they've come up before we actually even close out the previous year. But with the even possibility that there might be money left over from this standpoint and where we're sitting with, what, 800-some thousand in contingency that we put in, to me, the 20,000 at this point is a good bet, and it's, you're right, the city needs it.
One thought I just had when you just said that, we did not spend 100% of the 2021 contingency, so I could also add this to your supplements that you do in the spring if there's others. So that would keep the 2022 for you for other items that come up.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing I forgot to mention, we're naming this edition in honor of one of our former members. Christy Arnold was a LifeQuest member who was a very active Kiwanian. She came to our meetings all the time. She came to our events. She was in a wheelchair. And we've added pieces to this that we think even she would appreciate. So we're not just gearing this towards children, to anybody of any ability from the city of Mitchell. So we're proud to offer the Christy Arnold addition to the Kiwanis Park.
And if any of you would like to donate.
I got a lake to fix.
Donations. We'll have a Dropbox. I have Venmo, Kiwanis, Mitchell Kiwanis. Yeah.
I'll Venmo you 20, you Venmo me 200 back, and we're good. Did either you two want to speak?
No, we're just here for emotional support for everybody.
All right, Steve, did you want to say anything? All right, we have a motion to second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve purchase for playground equipment at Kiwanis Park off Sourcewell bid contract.
Move approved.
Oh, perfect.
Is that you, Mr. Allen?
Yes.
All right. Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? You want to speak to that at all? Giving you your chance.
No.
All right.
Rah, Kiwanis.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Good luck.
Thanks. That purchase, that's our money coming back to you for that. So that's,
Yeah, I know.
that's our.
If you get a little extra,
Raise
we
it.
could throw it, we could go use it to fix the lake. Shameless plug. Thank you, ladies. Action to approve Foster Bridge, Street Bridge Preservation, BIG, utility and right-of-way certificates, project 2020, that's supposed to be 2022, too.
Yes.
Okay. So it says 2021-2.
Oh, that's the project number.
Oh, that, okay.
Yeah,
So
the project number is that old. We've been
Is that old?
Yes. Grants take a while.
Okay, that's why I wanted to know. All right, 2021-2.
Yep.
Mr.
Right.
Schrader.
As you all know, we have received a SDDOT big grant. Attached is for the mayor for you guys to approve, for the mayor to sign a state utility and right-of-way certificate. This is basically just a formality. We don't believe that any utilities or right-of-way are going to be affected by this project, and we recommend that you approve for the mayor to sign the 2 certificates.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? I think our audience dwindled. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement 8/20/22-02. So here's the 02 one. Ullman and 23rd Lift Station Design and Bidding with SPN Project 2022-3. Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this project was identified in SPN's 2020 facility plan for our sanitary sewer improvements. We've also identified this as a project to be done in our ARPA funding through the state. The proposed project is estimated to be $1.1 million. SPN has given us a contract for $49,500 for design and bidding services, and staff recommends approval, and I will answer any questions you may have.
This will relocate that lift station to south of 23rd, correct?
That is correct.
So the lot that is currently a city lot, could that be it?
That will be an empty lot.
Right. So
yes.
Could we
You can do with it what you would like.
get rid of it? Put it back on the tax rolls? Okay.
Possibility, yep, that's an option.
Okay. Thank you. Further discussion? Well, guess I need a motion. So moved. Motion by Mr. Smith. Second. Second by Mr. Sayers. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement 8/20/22-07, South Dakota DOT Fast Act funds vehicles.
Mayor, Council, Jessica Pickett, Community Services Director. We received an award for our grant application that we submitted for 2 new transit vehicles. This is not in our current budget, unlike the other ones that we had, because they're behind on getting vehicles. So our hopes are to have them suspended in the 2023 budget if vehicles are available at that time, and we will put it in next year's budget.
So we would have to have the $52,500 in the 2023 budget?
Correct.
Okay.
We'll get the grant money, but hold off on everything in budget.
Yeah, we can see where we're at the end of the year. I'll move approval.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve resolution R 2022-02, dissolving tax increment District 18.
Mayor and council, included in your packet was a resolution to dissolve this TIF. This is what we have referred to as South Estate, Starlight Estates. It's south of Menards. I did put together a TIF update that I included in the packet for your review, as well as a summary. I do like to point this out just so people see the value and why we have approved TIFs in the past. This one paid off in 10 years instead of the 20 years allocated for the TIF. As of December 2020, which was the last time we got the certification of what the increment is from the Department of Revenue, we usually get that right after the year starts. So the increment created by that TIF district was $14,742,180, and it is going to be higher than that when we get the values from 2021. So that's just another one that is now paid off. The ones that were shown on the sheet that were grayed out are the ones that are dissolved, and the ones that are still in white are the ones that we still have open. If anyone else was interested in looking in what we have for open TIFs, that second attachment does show exactly where they're located with the maps and what's left on those as well. And I can answer any questions that council might have.
I was just going to make a quick comment. I remember voting that in, and that was with the road that went from Ethan Development. At that point, the only way to access that was through Carl Road, which a few remember that here. And now we put that nice road on, is it Commerce, or what street is that? Whatever.
Capitol.
It is Capitol. So then it's got just to the west of Menards when it flows into Spruce. So that was a very good project for us to complete, and now you look at the development out there, and it's really taken off.
That street's 4 blocks long? Is that about right, Joe?
That sounds right. Yep, it's a fairly long stretch.
So our current total value of TIFs with the increment that has been realized, for the ones that I could find financials for, there's some that they were dissolved so much longer before I got here. They didn't have them on Department of Revenue anymore, but we're at $69,281,165. So they're looking good. And as a reminder, you'll see even on this update on those most recent TIFs at the end, I got to make this bigger. This is very small. Well, this one's not going to show it. Let me show it on the other one. Sorry. Our recent TIFs, because we've done those as grants, they do not show as debt against the city. So they show here instead in this grants line. We've switched those last 3 TIFs to be set up that way. So there's no constitutional debt associated with these last ones.
Okay, entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action approved Resolution R 2022-03, plat of Lot 1 of Plains Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, requested by Plains Commerce Bank. Mr. Jagus.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 6-0 with 1 absent. This would be the Chef Louis lot that is going to be no more. Plains Commerce has purchased the lot. They're doing some cleanup work with it. They will be vacating the existing 3 lots that are there, putting it into 1 lot. Just cleans it up for future when they go to build and do their site plan and everything like that. We will require an elevation certificate at the time of building. Because it's highway business, it'll have to go through plan approval, so there are more steps to go with this.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-04, plat of Lot 5, Block 1 of Woodland Heights, First Edition, a subdivision of Lot 2, Cranes Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, is requested by Ethan Lumber Co-op.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval 6-0 with 1 absent. It follows the master plan down there. It's actually the last lot on Capitol Street for building on. All the other ones have building permits already. We have an elevation certificate for it. Planning Commission, Public Works has no issues with it.
Motion by Mr. McCardle, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We're adjourned.